That's a very good question. Why don't we make voting easier? I think we should. And there are a number of ways of doing that. You could have automatic voter registration. You could have same-day voter registration. You could have voting on a weekend, or you could declare Election Day a national holiday. So there are a number of different devices that would reduce the barriers to voting and the costs of voting, and I favor most of them. There are a lot of reasons why we don't make voting easier, but we have to focus on the question of who's the we. States differ widely, and a lot of those differences reflect state and local politics. Some states are more comfortable with an enlarged pool of voters than others. Some political parties, and sometimes a conspiracy between the two political parties, will be more comfortable with a controlled pool of electorate, of voters made up of known quantities or familiar groups. A lot of politicians are afraid of expanding the electorate because they don't know who will enter. I'm actually in a small minority of political scientists who believe that we ought to make voting compulsory. I base my conclusion on the experience of Australia, which instituted compulsory voting almost a century ago and raised voting participation in the space of a single election from 59% to 91%. It's been above 90% ever since, and the legislation is backed by a fine the equivalent then and now of a minor traffic ticket. I think elections where nearly everyone participates are more fully representative and democratic. We should declare Election Day a national holiday. If people are afraid of the economic consequences of yet another day away from work, Election Day could be on a weekend. There's no compelling reason not to put it on a weekend. I suppose there are a handful of people who, for religious reasons, would object to either a Saturday or a Sunday, and special arrangements can be made to accommodate them. But one way or another, an entire day should be set aside from work for elections. There are a few scattered instances of voter fraud. But the evidence that I've studied suggests that it is a very minor, almost trivial problem. It's not something we should be worried about, and it's not something against which we should pass special laws which have the effect of making voting more difficult, particularly for poorer and elderly voters. I don't think it's worth it. I don't think there's any evidence to suggest that we should. I believe that both voter ID laws and the failure to set aside a full day away from work for national elections do tend to reduce voter participation for no good reason. And for that reason, I am opposed to voter ID laws and in favor of a national election day holiday.
The Electoral College is the system in the American Constitution that determines how presidential elections are conducted.